Hey everyone, welcome to the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. I'm glad that you could join me tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a couple things. To start, we're going to go back to last weekend and revisit the Second Amendment rally that I was a speaker at. Take a look at the speech. We also have some really cool technology news coming out of Xbox. I think what they're doing in regards to their actual hardware for the system is pretty amazing and inspiring. We have another incident at a restaurant, this time involving not letting a person use the public restroom unless she pays for something. Once again, kind of like the Starbucks incident in Philadelphia, except this time she took matters into her own hands, maybe something else into her own hands as well. We also have another body cam from a police officer showing that things aren't what they seem with the way the woman is saying the incident went down. Kendrick Lamar, a rapper I'm not too familiar with, but pulls up a white girl on stage to sing his lyrics and picks out a song that happens to use the N-word a lot of times and then is completely shocked when she actually says it on stage. We have Tomi Lahren getting a drink thrown on her just for having a different opinion than the other patrons at the restaurant. We have news from Hillary, Elizabeth Warren, and Nancy Pelosi, the trifecta of horrible women in our politics. And we're going to end the night with some more news on MS-13 and how people are reacting to that as well. In the meantime, I want to thank you for coming and joining us. This is the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. I want to thank everyone for joining the Generation Y Conservative Podcast. I'm glad that you could join us tonight. If you want to follow me on social media, just search for the Generation Y Conservative on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and hit subscribe, like, or follow on any of those platforms. And make sure that you actually hit the get notifications on each of those platforms as well, so you can be notified when we come up with new content. It's great to follow along with the articles that we find interesting on the Facebook page. We also publish videos, most importantly to the YouTube page, where you can find the latest podcast and its HD glory in video and audio. And also our movie reviews show up on there as well. We have a couple really neat surprises around the corner for that as well. And then on Twitter, you can find my shenanigans on there as well. In regards to what's been going on lately, the last couple of weeks I've actually been talking about how I had a rally coming up, a Second Amendment rally at Relic Hunter Firearms, and we actually went through that last week, and unfortunately the weather didn't cooperate with us too well, and it was pouring down rain for a good half of it and drizzling for the other half. We did have some hardcore patriots show up, about estimated between 200 and 300 participants in the rally. I got the opportunity to introduce Marty Nothstein, Dean Browning, Shanine Allen from Philadelphia, who was a black woman who was arrested for crossing the New Jersey state line with her carry permit and obviously the weapon, and was arrested for, I believe, 45 days, even though she was legally carrying. It's against the state rules or state laws for New Jersey. Also had Andrew Oliveira, who's a local Easton High School senior, who that night actually went on to go to his prom, so he was a busy guy that day. But he organized a Second Amendment rally protest at his school in response to all the school walkouts in opposition to the Second Amendment. So that was really cool too. And obviously Mo, who is the trainer at Relic Hunter Firearms, is awesome. And I call her the Executioner. That's my new nickname for her. So she runs ladies' nights there and everything else. Really cool woman. But in regards to the speech, I thought I would take the opportunity here to introduce it on the podcast. So without further ado, this is my speech on the Second Amendment.
While I have you guys here, I want you guys to get a little bit more interactive with me and everything. Do we have any military members here or vets here or police officers? So give them a big round of applause, because I got to tell you something. It falls on every single one of us to protect our rights here in this country, but they are out there fighting for our rights abroad, and it's really appreciated. And if you get an opportunity, you see those people that raise their hands and everything. certainly stop by and always just reach out to them and thank them for their service, no matter who they are, what branch they serve in, or local police officers and everything too. You know, at this year's CPAC, I was down there. I've been there for the last 3 years now, and it's an experience if you ever get the chance. But Ben Shapiro, a political commentator, was down there, and he asked the audience 2 questions that I thought was very important. I want to ask you guys those questions here today. How many of you feel bad and are against school shootings and what's going on with the victims of school shootings? How many of you out there are against that? Okay. How many of you are for the Second Amendment? The media doesn't seem to understand that we can be for both of those things, and that those 2 things can coincide with each other. And that's the point that Ben Shapiro made. But I have a couple more questions for you. This is actually going to be interesting, if we have any. It's a smaller crowd, but do we have any Democrats in the crowd that are Second Amendment supporters? No? One thing, now that sounds a little funny, I'm sure, but one thing I think we need to understand that's very important is we do have people across the aisle that are Second Amendment supporters as well, okay? Now the liberals are one thing that we have to deal with sometimes, and it gets infuriating, but we also have to understand that there are also Republicans out there that are not for the Second Amendment. We have plenty of progressives in both sides of the political aisles, okay? Is anybody here today that doesn't have a stance on the Second Amendment, that's here just to figure out where they stand and get a better perspective on either side? Pretty strong crowd. All right, good. So we're speaking to everyone here. Well, I'm here to talk to you about a subject that a lot of people will tell you is outdated, old-fashioned, and not even relevant in today's society. And they would say the same thing about the Bible, but they're wrong on both fronts. I'm here to talk to you and inform you on some things in regards to the Constitution. Our founding documents included the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and Bill of Rights were written with weight to every single word. After multiple attempts between Jefferson and Adams and others to get the language right, they came up with something revolutionary, knowing full well that it would put a death warrant on their heads. Our Constitution is what makes America, America. It is the document that separates and sets apart our country from all the others. Yes, we have our faults. I think we need to admit those sometimes. We continue to have them. But as a country, we have and will overcome those because of the setup of our system and the tenacity of our citizens. How is our Constitution different than other countries? Well, unlike other countries, instead of listing our rights, ours was molded by minds with the ever-present tyranny looming over their shoulders. Instead of listing our rights, they listed things that the government cannot do to you. And I think that's very important. It binds the hands of government from getting out of control and becoming a tyrannical regime. Not many people learn about that angle in school, though, if it's even learned at all. But now that you know, I want you to take a listen to some of these. The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the free speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Congress shall make no law regarding these. This is a limitation on the government, not us. The Second Amendment, we can get a round of applause for that. That's why we're here for today. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Be infringed by who? Let's hear it, guys. Come on, get a little bit more interactive. The government. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Who would search without a warrant or seize property? The government again, right? And so on and so on. You read through the Constitution. These are all limits on our government, which is the exact opposite of what you see in most countries around the world, which is telling you what your rights are, This is telling our government what they can't do to us. And I think once people start realizing that and rereading our founding documents, they gain a whole new appreciation for what America was actually built upon. So let's head back to why we're actually here today, and that is the Second Amendment. Who is a well-regulated militia? Raise your hand. Everybody raise your hand. Every single one of us is part of that well-regulated militia. Every able-bodied man, woman, and child in this country that is able to responsibly handle a firearm is there as part of the militia to keep this government in check. And I'd say for hunting too, and other purposes as well. So is it for hunting purposes? Yes. Is it for personal defense? Yes. But it shall not be infringed. So it doesn't matter what your reason is for a firearm. If you have one, it's your right to have one.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
One of the best questions that you get from people, especially on the left, is, well, why do you need an AR-15? Well, who the heck are you to tell me what I do or don't need for self-defense? It doesn't matter. Shall not be infringed. So, is it for defense against a tyrannical government? Yeah. Absolutely. It's amazing how we hear daily that the Trump administration is a fascist dictatorship, and yet they fight for our firearms to be taken away and only used by this said regime. By the way, the Pennsylvania Constitution is arguably better than the federal level. Article 1, Section 21 of the Pennsylvania State Constitution states, "The right of citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned." A little bit stronger language there. For decades and centuries, we have had people fighting for their constitutional rights, the women's suffrage movement, the civil rights movement, to be equal to their fellow man. And for the first time in our history, we have people fighting for their rights to be taken away. Think about how crazy that is. So let's go down that road for a second, though, so each and every one of you can realize just how dangerous the loss of our Second Amendment would be to our nation. If the Second Amendment is gone, what is to stop any of the other amendments being stripped from our Constitution?
Nothing.
Exactly. I like this guy's passion. Put him up front. If you enjoy and appreciate protesting events like this, you are taking advantage of the First Amendment. If that is taken from us, your right to comment on, criticize, or otherwise speak freely is reliant on the whim of your party being in power. And I can guarantee you that the political pendulum will always swing, and those in power will always call for the silencing of others on the other side of the aisle. So yes, I am outright telling you right now that the Second Amendment grants us, as citizens, the opportunity to hold our government accountable to protect the rest of the Bill of Rights. It is the only amendment that defends all the other amendments. So how many of you are familiar with the name Mark Robinson? My wife, that's it? You guys need to listen to my podcast more. I'll tell you a little bit more about that after I get done here. Mr. Robinson stood in front of his city council in Greensboro, North Carolina, and gave the "I am the majority" speech this year. Okay, does that ring a bell to anyone? There you go. He said, when are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my rights, my constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white from buying a firearm to protect myself from the very people that we're here talking about. You need to look up Mark Robinson because his speech is pretty amazing. It went on and he did a great job. But he couldn't have said it better than the way he put it. Instead of punishing those that commit the laws, the solution is always to punish those that follow the law. Dean mentioned this before, there are upwards of 310 million firearms in the United States, and less than 1% of them are ever used in a violent crime. As a matter of fact, the majority of gun deaths are from suicides, which feeds right into our argument that there is something wrong with people, not the firearms.
That's right.
How about this? Many of you, I'm sure, on social media and other places have been seeing graphs that people have been posting up a lot in regards to how bans on guns work in other countries, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland. And what it says on those graphs is that when instituted, the gun deaths go down. I'm going to give you a little teaser here. It's actually true. The gun deaths do go down, but for obvious reasons. There's less guns in the society. What they don't tell you, though, is deceiving. What they don't show you is that the overall homicide rate increases after these gun bans. And the reason for that is because you have emboldened the criminals to go after people that are now defenseless. And whether they're using guns, it doesn't matter. They're still killing. They're using some other type of object to do this. You know, we used to teach gun safety and practice shooting in schools, believe it or not. Some of you probably remember. I was on the right in the back end of seeing kids carrying shotguns in the back of their trucks to our school. But in today's headlines, they read of students getting expelled for cutting out a piece of paper into the shape of a gun, eating a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun, getting caught with a 3-inch G.I. Joe figurine gun, even pointing their fingers or playing with imaginary guns. Why would schools' zero-tolerance policies be so ridiculous? Well, that's because we have a progressive politicians on both sides that want to ingrain a fear into these children around the subject of guns at an early age so that when that generation grows up, they will be the politicians who can easily pass gun control laws. The product of progressivism is years down the line. It's a long game, okay? I think you guys, if you don't understand that already, you really need to understand that. These David Hoggs and Emma Gonzalez's that are out there in front of the media and everything, they're not getting anywhere because the statistics are against them. But they know that if they put this fear into the students now that are growing up, they will be the next generation of politicians that can do something about it. It all sounds so depressing. It's enough to get you angry. I know there's anger here today, and that's why we're all here. But I'm not angry, okay? I'm actually stand here full of hope. While millennials are a mixed bag that lean more towards the socialist Bernie Sanders mentality, it is the next generation after that that you should be focusing on. You see, the left has overplayed their hand the last couple years. These children have grown up watching their older siblings and parents wearing pussy hats and throwing bigger temper tantrums than them, rioting and screaming at the sky, all just over election results. They see the insanity of walking on eggshells to not offend people, but realize everything offends the easily offendable. They've seen the demonization of the family and marriage and divorce rates of over 60% today. Believe it or not, there's actually multiple articles being written by worried media members about how conservative this next generation actually is. Even shining examples like our local Easton High School student Andrew, who spoke earlier. And that gives me a lot of hope. Now, I know that the majority of you are well-informed citizens. If you weren't, you probably wouldn't be here today, and you would have raised your hand on when I asked you if you didn't have a position to take yet. But you should be able to handle these counter-arguments when you come in contact with people in society. Because it is facts, statistics, and the Constitution ultimately, and you as a citizen, that will win this battle for the Second Amendment, not feelings. So thank you very much, guys. And then we're going to give away a couple more prizes then. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was the Second Amendment speech where I spoke on the importance of the Constitution and the Second Amendment. I am being told that it looks like there's going to be another Second Amendment rally at the same location coming up this September. So if I'm asked to speak there again and MC the event again, I'll certainly be updating you with those details as they come out. Certainly we're giving, not we, but the event was giving away firearms as door prizes and cleaning mats for guns. They had yard signs that said not a gun-free zone. There was a lot of stuff that they were giving away. So it was a really good time, and a lot of people walked away with some pretty hefty door prizes. So it was really cool. But, you know, what I find really interesting about that is the fact that I really held back on a lot of details and things that I wanted to go over in regards to the Second Amendment and arguments against people and those on the left that throw all these excuses at you and try to throw you off track when you're arguing for the Second Amendment. So if I do get back invited again to do a speech, what I will probably focus on is working with the crowd on how to respond to some of these things, like why do you need an AR-15? Or the Founding Fathers had muskets at the time. They couldn't have foreseen the fact that people were walking around with semi-automatic weapons today. And there are great responses to those types of things. And in the meantime, if you're interested in some of those responses, you can actually go onto my YouTube channel and check out the Hot Topic portion, which ran for over an hour, of discussing all those details on the Second Amendment. And it's really informative and really great. So hopefully I have the opportunity to go and do some of those and get really interactive with the crowd, which is what I really enjoyed doing with this speech. So moving on, we're going to get into some technology news. I happen to be an Xbox fan myself. I know that there's always a little combative nature between PlayStation people and Xbox people, but I thought I came across a video that I thought was really inspiring that Xbox put together, because they are coming out with an adaptive controller for people with disabilities, and it's really forward thinking in regards to how they cater to their audience that isn't able to fully function with the regular controllers that you would get for any of the systems. So I just want to present that video to you because I really think it's really neat. And if you're listening to the audio portion of the podcast later on and you want to tune back in, at least find the video online or take a look at it in the podcast. Let's take a look.
At Xbox, we have a controller design that our fans love. However, for gamers with limited mobility or gamers who don't use both their hands, this controller design might not work best for them.
I pushed you out of the way, I'm sorry. Doorknobs are the worst thing ever invented. Putting on shoes, the cell phones that I use, these are the sorts of things that we don't think about until we have to, and I think about them every day.
Yeah!
I have cerebral palsy on my entire right side. This side of the controller is fine. This side doesn't happen. As game platforms have gotten more sophisticated, the controllers have gotten more sophisticated, and it started to get really frustrating.
We designed the Xbox Adaptive Controller through feedback from the accessibility community.
The Xbox Adaptive Controller is really easy. You just plug it in, and then you can plug in various other devices. I can make it work for me the way it has to.
With the Xbox Adaptive Controller, a gamer can game with one hand and one foot, or one hand and their shoulder, or even one foot and their chin.
And I can change it from game to game.
Good, ready? Forward, squeeze tall, there it is.
Craig Hospital is a facility for patients who've either had a spinal cord injury or a traumatic brain injury, and it's a place for their rehab.
Yes. We're here for game night, and we're helping new patients getting back into gaming again. Is that the D-pad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our role as occupational therapists is to get people back to doing. When the Xbox Adaptive Controller came along, it acted like an Xbox controller and it just worked.
Uh-oh, over there.
Ooh!
On the standard Xbox controller, it's just hard to press the buttons because can't really put pressure through my hands. But then with the adaptive controller, I can use like larger joysticks, larger buttons that are easier to press and reach.
Corey and his brother Zachary are twins. Before Corey's injury, Zachary had gamed with him regularly, and that was the way that they related to each other as siblings.
Who do you love playing Xbox with here at Craig Hospital?
Zach.
The Xbox Adaptive Controller and the co-pilot feature allowed them again to play games together. So there's a huge social component to it.
You got that? Yes, yes. They can play any game that they want. I see the confidence just burst out of them.
I think that was just really inspiring, and I get a little choked up on it because you just see. Well, let me take it from this approach. Gaming for a lot of people, not the ones that are on it all day long and not doing anything else with their lives. Gaming is an opportunity for people to escape and relax and escape their reality for a little bit and jump into an interactive world that they feel that they can escape to, that they can interact with their friends who don't happen to be near them across the country or across the world. It expands across the world to be able to interact with people. And when you take a look at the type of people that are in this video and what Xbox is doing, Microsoft is doing, to help them escape the reality that they're trapped in at that point, it's I just think it's really cool and really inspiring, because some of those people are so disconnected from the world and can't interact with people, and they have this opportunity now that there's just multiple ways of actually going about that and interacting with people again, that it gives them that escape, and they don't have that with the regular controller set. And I know it sounds stupid, I know it's just video games, but to these people, some of these people in that video, that is their only escape from their reality. So I'm getting a little choked up on it, so I'll keep on moving on. But I just thought that was really inspiring, and one really cool way to go about with gaming, and Microsoft really stepping up their game and getting involved with their community. So really neat. Okay, moving on here. I got some bad news for you. Let's just keep on going with the emotions here. Last week we came to you with possibly one of the funniest news stories, possibly ever covered on the podcast, and that was this guy who won $200-some million in the lottery and chose to spend $200,000 of that to buy 20,000 tons of manure and dump it on his ex-boss's yard. And he got arrested. There was a mugshot where he's laughing and everything. And we could not stop cracking up because every detail of that story was hilarious. Well, I wanted to get an update on it, started looking around, started researching a little bit more on it. And I believe in coming to you and correcting stories when I get them wrong, because I see a lot of my friends on the left that come out with these Trump supporters attacking people, and then it turns out that they were faked and everything, or faux attacks, and they never correct the story even though I contact them and tell them to. This unfortunately was not the case with this mugshot. It turns out that this whole story was a fake story. And the details of it say that the image of the laughing lottery winner Brian Morris was not from any incident in 2018. It shows an individual that was arrested back in 2014 in Illinois on suspicion of driving under the influence, not manure-related harassment of a former employee. Although the story might have fallen under the too entertaining to check heading, its source, World News Daily Report, frequently repurposed unusual mugshots to craft bizarre and fictional tales. The site admits as much in a footer displayed on each of its pages. So unfortunately, that news story wasn't real, but we certainly did get a good laugh over it. Okay, so one of the stories that we were actually covering a couple weeks ago was in regards to Starbucks in Philadelphia getting in trouble, and they actually just had an educational camp where they shut down Starbucks, or it's coming up or something like that, where they're going to be shutting down and doing cultural like training, I guess is what the term was, because two black men went into a Starbucks in Philadelphia, asked to use the restroom. They were told no, that they had to buy something, and the manager apparently went over a couple times, tried to like serve them at the table, even though that's not the way it's typically done. They usually go up to the counter, and eventually it escalated to the point where the cops were called because they were loitering in the store, and the employees went by the policy, even though it doesn't seem like that's typically what a Starbucks would do. The policy states one way, how a store reacts is another. But if they go by the book, that's the way it goes. Well, that isn't the only incident that happened at a restaurant chain where someone had to use the public restroom and was denied that service without buying something in the restaurant. So let's take a look at this video here. There's no sound, so I'm going to be your Morgan Freeman narrator for the night. Let's take a look at this. This is at a Tim Hortons, by the way. Turn your kids away from the video screen. All right, so this woman's asking to use the bathroom here. She's being denied. She's getting angry with them. She's telling them, just getting really pissed off. So she basically threatens to poop right there in the cashier line, and she's not joking about that. And there it goes. Okay, so she did that. Oh, she picks it up and throws it at the employees. That's pretty nasty. She can't even pull up her pants. She's going nuts. She throws the paper towels at them and everything. Oh my word. So talk about, this is one of the things we were just talking about in that video on the speech that I gave and everything. There is a sickness in our society that we're not focusing on. We're choosing to overlook that and instead focus on the actual tools that people use to go crazy on each other, when it's the crazy that we should be focusing on. This woman just pooped on the floor at a restaurant and threw it at the employees because they told her that she couldn't use the restroom without buying something. That's mental instability right there for you. So it's pretty disgusting. I don't know if we... Gary joined in. He said, I can't believe the pandering from Xbox. It looks like... Oh, he made fun of it. Oh, cops did everything right. Oh, okay. Starbucks CEO. Yeah, Gary's talking about how Starbucks is shutting down for a day for the cultural training and everything. They did nothing wrong. They went by the policy. If there's a problem with the policy should be changed, and that's something that the organization can take a hold of without having to shut down. But yeah, it was absolutely pandering because no one wanted to face the facts and go into the line of fire and say that the employees actually did the right thing and that there's a false narrative out there, much like the body cam footage that we were talking about last week with the people faking the incidents and calling on that the cops were doing things wrong when the body cams actually proved something completely different. So it's just ridiculous what's going on. But we do have this woman pooping in her hand or on the floor and picking up and throwing at people. Hey, speaking of just outright craziness, Rachel Dolezel, okay, if you don't remember Rachel, she is the one who is a former NAACP chapter leader who resigned after it was found out that she is not actually African American. So, I forget where this was. Washington. It was in Washington. So this woman was like outspoken during the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And here it turns out she's just been like overly tanning and doing her hair in like a black cultural style and everything, and trying to say that she is actually black when her parents are like, actually, if you see her picture when she's white, she is white, okay? So that just blew up, and it should have gotten to the point where everyone was just blasting her and she could have just shrunk away into the shadows. Unfortunately, she didn't, and people stuck up for her, and this whole trans thing started. And if you can be transgender, you can also be trans race. We've had people say they're trans species. So, I mean, this thing just snowballed out of control. We're to the point where a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how she was actually offered a Netflix show or a documentary of some sort. So that's going to be coming out onto a Netflix soon. Well, Rachel can't seem to keep herself out of the news. And according to Fox News, forgive me, I know that's the one conservative source that shall not be mentioned, Rachel Dolezel is hit with a felony theft charge in a welfare fraud case. Are the jokes writing themselves here? I don't know. So she's facing a felony theft charge in Washington state after she allegedly made false statements to secure nearly $9,000 in food and child care assistance. The charges against Dolezal, who changed her name to Nikiki Diallo in October 2016, were reported by KHQ TV. According to court documents, investigators with Washington State's Department of Social and Health Services started looking into her finances in March of 2017 after the publication of her autobiography, In Full Color, Finding My Place in a Black and White World. This woman, like, this is the type of stuff I'm talking about a sickness in society. Here, again, she should have shrunk out
disappeared into the shadows. Instead, she's like, no, I'm black. Like, I tan. I get this hairstyle. I am trans race. I am black. And she not only doubles down and goes for the Netflix documentary, she writes her own autobiography, was an NAACP chapter leader and everything. Like, this woman doesn't know when to quit. Some of these people just don't know when to quit on this stuff. So the investigator Kyle Bungie said that Dolezal had claimed that her only source of income was $300 per month in gifts from friends. However, the department found that she had deposited nearly $84,000 in her bank account between August of 2015 and September of 2017 without reporting it. According to the investigation, the money came from sales of her autobiography as well as the sale of her art, soaps, and handmade dolls. She's a busy woman. You got to give her that. Dolezal did report a change of circumstance to the state agency, saying she did a one-time job in October 2017 worth $20,000, according to court documents. She's also charged with perjury and making false verification for public assistance. So Rachel doesn't seem to be going away, unfortunately. It is what it is. All right, so let's go on here. Okay, so this is pretty infuriating. Last week we were talking about the multiple body cam footage videos coming out from police officers that showed a completely different story than what the people were saying that were pulled over. One was actually another NAACP leader and also a pastor at a church, and he said that the cop was being completely racist to him and said something to him about his Mercedes that he was driving that, oh yeah, and I'm Bill Gates, basically. Body cam footage comes out, nothing of the sort. Guy was completely nice to the driver. As a matter of fact, he let him go when he should have given him a ticket for multiple things, including the reason why he pulled him over, and for the fact that the tags weren't transferred for his new car from his old car, and the dealership should have taken care of that. He said, just get it taken care of. The other one was of a woman who said that she was verbally harassed and the cop was outright racist to her. She went on a video rant that lasted more than 9 minutes that we had to cut down, and it turned out when the body cam footage was released on that, this guy actually did it by the book, and in my opinion, she was completely rude to the cop, and he basically laid down the policy and the law and everything. He asked her to sign the ticket, which is what most people do in almost every single state, just in recognition that the ticket was given to you, not admitting to the guilt of it. You can show up to court or you can go to jail. He recognized those rules, laid them out for her, and she refused to sign the ticket until he finally said, okay, well, I'm going to have to pull you out of the car and arrest you, and don't worry. He didn't say that they would impound the car. He said, don't worry, we'll get the car towed. In the meantime, it is a rental. We'll take care of it for you. Basically saying, we'll do everything by the book. Don't worry about it, but you're going to have it one way or the other. Turned out that was false. The third video that we showed last week was actually the teen in the Waffle House after the prom that he took his sister to. I don't know if that was down south or not. But the original footage that came out was of a cop choking this black teen outside of a Waffle House and throwing him down to the ground, and it was pretty nasty looking. It was bad. This kid was being manhandled, and if there's any complaint I have on the whole situation as a whole, that would be one that it shows him being tossed around, which seems a little excessive. But again, I talk to cops and have friends that are cops, and you don't know the situation that you're in when you're surrounded by people and you're the only one in that situation having to take control of it. So sometimes if they're not cooperating, you got to do what's necessary to get the situation under control. Anyway, beyond that, more footage comes out inside the Waffle House from actually one of the kid's friends showing him and his sister just berating the Waffle House staff, throwing things at them, cursing them out and everything. So obviously the situation was out of hand on their part before the cop even gets there. Well, fast forward to this week, just a week later, we're getting more footage from a woman, well, not from her, but from the police department down in Texas. And according to the Daily Wire, it says a woman who claimed that a Texas Highway Patrol trooper raped her after she was placed under arrest for driving while intoxicated, might want to rethink her story now that the Texas Department of Public Safety has released the body cam footage from the arrest. The Texas Highway Patrol trooper pulled over 37-year-old Sharita Dixon Cole after she allegedly committed a traffic violation. They arrested her and took her to the Ellis County Jail, where she was formally charged with DWI, or driving while under the influence. In a press statement with the Texas Department of Public Safety, they wrote, following the arrest, spurious and false accusations related to this traffic stop were made against the Texas trooper. Upon learning of those allegations, the Texas Department of Public Safety immediately took action to review the video in connection with this traffic stop and arrest. The video shows absolutely no evidence to support the egregious and unsubstantiated accusations against the trooper during the DWI arrest of the suspect. The department is appalled that anyone would make such a despicable, slanderous, and false accusation against a peace officer who willingly risks his life every day to protect and serve the public. So, here's the thing. We're going to take a look at the initial footage of her at the cop car to show how polite he actually was to her in this situation. I believe that she was actually, again, like the last one, rude to this cop. Seemed either high or drunk, and which is why he probably pulled her out of the car and had her do some things in regards to tests and everything. But the police station released almost 2 hours of footage of her whole interaction, from being pulled over in the car to her at the police station and everything. None of it shows any of the things that she's accusing the cop of. So let's take a look at what actually happened at the car itself.
All right, put down the phone. Put down the phone. I'm with the Texas Highway Patrol. The reason for the stop tonight is driving on the improved shoulder. What took so long for you to pull over?
So I'm trying to figure out where I'm going, getting directions to someone's house, and at the same time, you have your lights on. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going.
Okay, why can't you don't take
I'm talking to someone behind me.
Okay. Who takes priority? I do. Okay. When I activate my emergency lights, you pull over. Okay. You don't keep going for another 3-4 miles.
Where?
When I first activated my lights, you had half of a mile to stop. You had a good shoulder, then you had an exit you could take. Then you kept on going. There was another shoulder you could stop. There was a good portion. Let me see your driver license, your insurance. Where are you coming from tonight? Where are you coming from tonight, ma'am?
Downtown Dallas.
Okay, what are we doing in downtown Dallas?
Out with my friends.
How much alcohol have you consumed this evening?
1 drink.
Just one? What was it?
Vodka pineapple.
Okay. What time did this drink? What time did you have this drink?
11.
So it was a good time ago. What have you been doing for the last 2 hours? 2.5 hours?
I stayed in the parking lot talking to my friends for about 45 minutes and just walk this way. And I'm trying to find my way to a place that's unfamiliar to me.
Where are you trying to go? Huh?
It's my fiance's house.
You don't know where your fiance lives?
Smoke here.
Okay, where did he move to?
Waxahachie.
Okay, well, but where in Waxahachie?
The address is not even the map. The problem is the map won't pull it up. So it's like, I think it's this exit.
How long have your fiance lived here?
Like 3 days.
Oh, so it really is just.
Yeah.
Do you not know where your driver license is?
It wasn't here. I gotta find it.
When did you go to the grocery store? And this stuff had been back there the entire time?
Yeah, because I didn't have enough time.
Eggs and chicken?
Yeah, I didn't have enough time to get the groceries out. I had to go out.
That's not safe to eat anymore.
Yes, it is.
I see your insurance.
I gotta pull
Just put. Okay. Just go ahead and step on out for me. Just set your foot down. You can leave all that stuff there on the seat. Right. Take the hat off for me. Sit on the seat, please. Thank you. Just step on back here. Just set the hat down. I don't want you to lose it. That's the only reason. No. Thank you.
Okay, so this goes on and shows some more footage, obviously, for another hour and a half at least, in regards to what actually happened with this woman. And nothing shows anything that was out of order for this police officer. Now, speaking of Rachel Dolezel, the far left activist Shaun King, who also thinks he's black, who appeared to add even more allegations to those made by Dixon Cole, said that she was kidnapped and being held hostage. In a 704-word Facebook post that got more than 56,000 shares, King wrote, "This woman was kidnapped and raped by a Texas state trooper, Officer Hubbard. She is now being held hostage in Ellis County Jail." He drove the car behind the vacant dealership and told Cole, "Why don't you just give me some of that sweet private area you have been given your fiance, and then you can go home." Cole begged Hubbard to just take her to jail. He placed his hands back up her skirt and penetrated her, warning her not to be stupid. He explained she could go home tonight if she just gave him what he wanted. After all of this footage came out, after 56,000 shares, probably more by this time, Shaun King apparently did say, after reviewing the footage and seeing everything, that this was a false accusation. But it's already out in the public opinion, court of opinions. At this point, you've gotten over 56,000 shares because you refuse to wait for the actual evidence to come out to see before you accuse someone of a false crime. On top of that, raping someone, a pretty serious accusation, before getting the facts straight and actually going to town with it in the public court of opinions with what actually happened. I think it's pretty disgusting. We've talked about this kind of stuff in the past where false accusations like this and the ones that we discussed last week, as well as all the accusations of the Trump supporter attacks that turned out to be fake and everything, this is starting to become basically an epidemic with false accusations and stuff. I believe, I'm not one for instituting more and more laws. I'm very libertarian on some things, on most things. But when it comes to false accusations like this, where you are destroying the livelihood of people, if you make a false accusation and you are caught lying, you should face the same punishment that person would have received if convicted guilty. So this woman should go to jail for the type of rape that he supposedly performed on her and everything that happened. And it would have been justice. That would be justice. Most of these people get let go. No one's taught a lesson in that case. And if we're going to teach them lessons, this is what needs to start happening. But you could disagree with me if you want. My sister's still talking about an article that I don't have the information on right now, unfortunately. So, okay, so I don't know if you guys have heard this, but there was actually a concert recently. Kendrick Lamar. Honestly, I don't know who the rapper is. I probably wouldn't know any of the songs if I heard them. If I'm not listening to talk radio, I'm usually listening to Sinatra or Bublé or something like that for calming, relaxing music. Not getting pumped up in my car or anything. But he invited a white fan onto the stage to sing one of his songs, specifically picked out one of the songs, and had her go up and sing. So before I get to some of the reaction to this, let's take a look at the actual footage of this girl getting up on stage.
You gotta bleep one single word though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I do it?
Yeah, you did it. I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
Should she stay up here, y'all?
No, please keep me up here. I got you. I'll try my hardest. I'm used to singing it like Ronan.
You sure?
I swear.
You got it?
I promise.
That's it.
Sorry about that.
All got along. They probably got me down by the end of the song.
In this case here, obviously Kendrick Lamar's song in almost every single line of the lyrics had the N-word in it and everything. And this made the news, or made the rounds on social media at least and everything, because a white girl got up on stage and started singing the lyrics that he wanted her to sing, and was not told prior to the singing of this that she should not actually use the lyrics that he wrote for his songs. And yes, if you're asking my honest personal opinion, this girl should have known better than to say that word and everything. But for the crowd to react the way that they did, and for Kendrick Lamar to react the way that he did when he asked specifically a white girl to get up on stage and sing this song that he specifically picked out for her, knowing full well what the lyrics were, what did you expect? And to be honest with you, there's a lot of information coming out now on Twitter, the talk of the Twitter, which would be that a lot of people are saying that this is just one of the videos that happened to make the rounds on social media, that he does this at almost every single concert, specifically seeks out white people to get up on stage and sing his lyrics, and then makes an example of them. Okay, so this is not the first time. It's probably not going to, hopefully it's the last time with enough not outrage, but I mean, calling out the guy on his BS in this case. This guy had an agenda. He wanted to force it on the crowd and everything, and make it so that they knew that this is a situation that white people are not allowed to say that word. I don't think anybody should be saying the word personally, but if you put it into your lyrics and you ask someone to sing it, then you're kind of falling apart. Well, it's not only me that's saying that. Whoopi Goldberg calls out Kendrick Lamar for rebuking fan who sang the N-word in his song. In a surprise move, Whoopi Goldberg has called out rapper Kendrick Lamar for belittling a fan who used the N-word as she sang one of his songs filled with the word. The lead co-host on ABC's The View on Tuesday seemed to take the side of the young woman named Delaney, whom Lamar castigated after calling her to the stage during a concert. Goldberg said, "I don't think he should have called her out. The word is in the lyrics. Don't put it in them if you don't want people to sing it." So it says, the chorus goes, "Man down, where you from, N-word. F who you know, where you from, my N-word. Where your grandma stay, huh, my N-word." Where my... These aren't even good lyrics to this song. I don't know why these people are going to this concert. Where your grandma stay? My word. Who? Apparently people really care where grandmas stay. I don't know. But when you've lost Whoopi Goldberg to your shenanigans, and she's disagreeing with you as a person on the left, and in this specific situation, you've lost hope on gaining much traction with your argument on this, besides the fact that people are going to say no one should be saying it. All right, let's go on. This is actually a really cool story here. According to I Effing Love Science, again, one website that we usually pick on, but sometimes they post some pretty cool things. The headline reads, "A high school kid from Oklahoma just made a massive breakthrough in chemistry." So it says a high school student from Oklahoma just discovered something completely unexpected in chemistry. He found out that carbon, which usually only forms 4 bonds, can end up forming a mind-boggling 7 bonds, a higher number than ever considered possible for the element. So this is what's really cool about this. So this Dr. Fazler Rahman was giving a lecture on carbon at Oklahoma School of Science and Mathematics in Oklahoma City. He used a 2016 paper to challenge his students on thinking about the possibility of carbon with more than 6 bonds. Unexpectedly, one of his students, George Wang, did more than just imagine it. He showed that 6 was not a strict limit. It was possible to have a carbon with 7 bonds. So here so this is what we're always talking about with education, right? You have teachers that get politically involved and get their bias out across on students and indoctrinate them with their thought process through tests and everything else. when they should, as a challenge, be taking this middle road and challenging their students to figure things out on their own. Well, instead of being involved with politics on this one, we're actually looking at science in this case. And this teacher challenged his students to actually take a scientific look at this and challenge them to figure out if it would actually be possible. And wouldn't you know, one of the students came back and showed that it was possible beyond what scientists up until this point have figured out. So obviously, as George Wang has a future ahead of himself, it looks like, and I'm just guessing here because I'm no science major myself, but it looks like when you're looking at the makeup of carbon, they're looking for bonds that structurally hold up. And they showed like a kind of image on the screen. I'll throw it up on the monitor in the actual end podcast of how it could be stable without collapsing on itself and everything. And he figured out this kind of teepee shape that seems to work, and that they're saying that could be even more bonds that are possible through this. So it's just kind of a little cool thing, because I think it's really neat when students take the opportunity to outshine the people that wrote the papers on this stuff. I mean, that's pretty amazing stuff, and that kind of person deserves a recognition. Okay, so this is a really fascinating story. This one's showing up on the Daily Wire. The article on this one, there's multiple articles that were out there over the last week in regards to this specific story, but Matt Walsh wrote about this. It says a former doctor has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for slipping an abortion pill into his pregnant girlfriend's tea. He will serve 3 years of the sentence. He should serve 0 years. He should not have been sentenced at all. So here's what happened. A doctor, former doctor in this case, didn't want his girlfriend to be pregnant. She finds out she's pregnant. He slips an abortion pill into her tea and miscarries, and the baby didn't survive, okay? Now I'm going to play devil's advocate on this story here, because there's such a hypocrisy in society on what's going on. So this guy's being sentenced to 20 years in jail, in prison, for doing this. But why? The argument from the left, or from those that are pro-choice, is always that this is not a baby, it's just a fetus. So what you're trying to make the argument for here is that a baby is only considered a baby when the mother actually wants it, otherwise it's just a fetus. So your argument falls apart on when life actually begins, scientifically speaking, and looking at the situation, and it all falls down onto mere opinion on when you actually want this baby, is when it somehow magically appears as a baby instead of a fetus in this case. Now, let's look at the rights of parents, right? If you're pro-choice, then this should not be a story. This guy should not be serving time for killing this baby. Because if you are pro-choice, you're saying that it's a woman's, or the parent, the creator's, and not the creator that we would say, the mother creator's rights to do with her body whatever she wants, because she created the child and she should be able to get rid of it if she wants. Never bringing into the equation what the father actually wants either. So if the father didn't want it and he wants an abortion on it, then what's the difference between him doing it and her miscarrying the child, and her doing it and tearing it apart limb by limb in an actual abortion clinic? There really is no difference, because the end result is a baby is actually killed in the process. So there's a pure wave of hypocrisy going over this whole thing. Do I believe that this man should serve time in prison? Absolutely. I think he should serve the rest of his life in there too. But what he did is no different than what women do in abortion clinics. As a matter of fact, it's probably even more painful, because studies or ultrasounds actually show that when you stick a needle into the uterus, or into the area to perform an abortion, that the fetus or baby will recoil out of signaling pain that they're going through. So when you're tearing them apart limb by limb, well, you have it. It's disgusting. And we have no appreciation for life anymore. And everything is just hypocrisy when it comes from the pro-choice crowd. Because if they look at it this way, then they look at it the other way on the other end of the argument. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. So these articles are coming out. Multiple sites were covering it and everything. And, you know, it's Matt Walsh, you can actually go and read his full opinion on the Daily Wire on that, but it's just hypocrisy all around. All right, we're going to wade back into the NFL controversy. Apparently, Trump has suggested that NFL players who kneel shouldn't be in the U.S., according to a headline by MSN, which obviously reads a little too far into what he always says. President Donald Trump praised an NFL policy banning kneeling during the Star-Spangled Banner, saying that maybe you shouldn't be in the country if you don't stand for the anthem. Trump spoke to Fox and Friends in an interview that aired on Thursday, which was yesterday in this case. The policy forbids players from sitting or taking a knee on the field during the anthem, but allows them to stay in the locker room. Any violations of the new rules would result in fines against teams. So when asked about this in the interview, he said, "I think it's good. I don't think people should be staying in the locker rooms, but still, I think it's good. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem, or you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be there, maybe you shouldn't be in the country." This is just Trumpism and the way he speaks about things. He didn't say, if you don't like it, you don't like that national anthem, get the heck out of the country. What the heck are you even doing here? He was just the way Trump speaks. If you don't like it, well, then why are you here? If you can't stand for the anthem, if you don't like standing for what America stands for, and you disagree with America's policies and everything, then what the hell are you doing here? Leave the country and go to a country where you think it's actually better. I can guarantee you'll probably be hopping that ship or plane right back here because it's not better anywhere else. I can guarantee you that. But here's what I find interesting about the whole NFL controversy. At this point, with the NFL coming out and making this policy that you should be standing, otherwise you're going to be fined, it's too little too late. It's kind of like I said on Twitter in regards to this story back and forth with the Morning Blaze crew, which I interact with on in the mornings and everything. They asked what the listeners' thoughts were and everything, and I said that they were talking about how this shouldn't be up to the NFL. As the league is concerned, it should be up to individual teams to find the players and everything. But I kind of look at it in a little bit of a different light. At this point, it's too little too late, like I said. But if you are going to institute the fines, then I don't think that the league is actually doing anything wrong. Because if you're for state rights, if you look at the NFL league like the federal government level, and then each team as its own state level, then you'd be for state rights in regards to the fines actually going to the teams and everything, and the teams figuring out if they find the players. In the case of the whole controversy itself, there's been such a mix-up over everything. We've talked about this in the past. You have people saying that this is not about, players that came out kneeling after Colin Kaepernick and everything were saying that this is not about the national anthem. It's not about the military and disrespecting them or anything. It's about how the black community is treated by cops. But if you go back to the actual words of Colin Kaepernick, who was one of the starting people that started this protest, he is saying it is about the national anthem. And first of all, he's saying it's about the national anthem, and that it's what America stands for, that he's against. He's been seen wearing socks that have pigs with police hats on them and everything. He has no respect for cops, and obviously he feels doesn't go the other way or anything. And the problem is, people will counter argue that and say that you're disrespecting the military. I absolutely agree with that. Okay, on reflection of the whole topic, I do believe that you're disrespecting the military. He happens to say that he doesn't feel that he's disrespecting the military. But what you don't understand is when you start something like this, you can't separate the two if the crowd that you're playing to and trying to get the message across to isn't separating it. You may be able to separate it in your mind, but your message is getting muddied when it gets to the fans themselves and what you're actually trying to project in your messaging for the actual protest. We go back to the fact that this is entertainment. People are there for football. My friend Matt has pointed out in the past, have people use the platform of sports to protest injustices in the past? Yes, but that doesn't make it right that we continue to do so. It shouldn't have happened back then either. People tune into sports to escape their reality, kind of like we were talking about earlier with video games and everything. In this case, though, when you're actually talking about teams in the NFL, you're actually talking about a business, okay? In this case, each team is its own business with the owners of those teams and everything else that are there paying you to do a job, which is entertainment. You cannot go out into the private sector anywhere, go into a boardroom meeting and stand up in the middle of a boardroom meeting and say, listen, everyone, I want everyone to stop for a second here. I think I have something really important to state. This is only for East Coasters, by the way. I believe that Sheetz has better food than Wawa. And then go on a tangent about it. Absolutely not. Wawa has better food. No one cares what your thoughts are in that meeting. You're there for business. And the manager, or the boss in that case, has every right to fire your butt and throw you out on the street, okay? It has nothing to do with the job that you're there for. And the fact that people make the argument that, well, this is a great opportunity for someone to use their fame and spotlight to project a message of inequality and injustices in the world. Listen, Colin Kaepernick, all these other football players, and any other sport for that matter, have the ability to walk out into the street with cameras following them no matter where they go, stop and say, listen, I want to talk about something. I can guarantee you they're going to get a huge following just on that. You do the protesting on your own time, not on the company's dollar, not on the team's dollar, and it's the inappropriate time to do so. And the league is starting to take action. Now, why is the league taking action? Well, the reason why they're taking action is because they lost 10% of their viewers last year in protest to watching the games because they were sick of all the political crap that was going into these games and having to watch it, okay? This is about hitting the NFL in their wallet, so they actually had to take a policy change. They're being called racist and everything. Before I even get into that, let's go on to the next article, which actually has a lot to do with that. ELP. I don't know who that is. Again, it's another singing group that I don't know about, don't really care. It's like a hip-hop group or something. Don't really care. Headline from Pitchfork says, Run the Jewels rejected NFL's Super Bowl song placement offer because F them. Run the Jewels, ELP, has criticized the NFL, telling the story of how the organization approached the rap duo to ask for the rights to their song Legend Has It to play during the Super Bowl. We said no because F them. You know, kind of like these kids down in Parkland, Florida, who have to use curse words to get their message across. Obviously, it's the only way to make headlines. We said no because F them. They operate like they're an indispensable public utility. They aren't. They are gone with the flip of a channel. And just in case anyone is wondering how much the NFL wanted to pay us for using Legend Has It, that would be $0, and the strong suggestion that we take them up on the opportunity to enrich a private, racist, and for-profit company masquerading as a non-profit. Blow me, is how they ended it. Well, it sounds like they're just very courageous a rap duo here who is standing up to the man. So let's go back here in regards to what they're actually criticizing the NFL for. Specifically, this last line here where it says to enrich a private, racist, and for-profit company masquerading as a non-profit. They're racist. Take a look at the percentage of players in the NFL that are black and how much those players are actually making, okay? Any player for that matter, and how much they're making, okay? Where are the claims of racism? If your claims of racism against the NFL is the fact that you're not allowing them to kneel in protest on your company's dollar, that's not racism, that's just policy. That's just trying to keep the business and not mix in all the political nonsense that's actually taking a hit to the industry and knocking down viewership and the amount of money that's coming in, which in the end screws over the players, because if the money's not coming in, those players are getting paid less. So they're kind of kicking their own butts in that case anyway. Private organization. Well, on a team level, yes. For-profit company masquerading as a non-profit. Okay, so I made a mistake in my posting on the original post on Facebook and everything. I was talking about how the NFL is a huge moneymaker, and then I actually did look into it. The NFL itself is a non-profit. It's the teams that are the for-profit teams and everything with their stadiums and the merchandise and everything that they sell. But it's obviously a big industry for money and everything. So look, if I'm going to agree with anything in this case, it's that the NFL should not be a non-profit 501c3 or whatever that the tag is for it. But I think Roger Goodell just asked for like $30 million or something like that, as well as his own private jet for the rest of his life. Oh no, I'm sorry, his own private jet that he can keep, and life and health insurance for the rest of his life, even if he's not with the NFL anymore. So, I think a lot of people actually have and take issue with the NFL and Roger Goodell specifically and what he does in regards to the policies and everything. I mean, there's play policies that have been screwed up too in regards to, look at the last Super Bowl and everything. The Eagles were able to do something that teams before that against the Patriots weren't allowed to do, because everything is just so convoluted in the NFL rules. Not that the Patriots wouldn't want it anyway, because the Eagles were a better team this year, just so you know. And if my wife is tuned in, she'll probably chime in on that one. Because I'm an Eagles fan, she's a Patriots fan, and we finally got it. That's all I have to say about that. But if you've been watching the podcast, you already know about that. All right, let's keep going here. So if you've been following along with the podcast, you know that that 2 or 3 years ago now, I actually put together a video that's still available on my YouTube channel. Actually, 2 videos that I put together for the Blaze in hopes of working for them. It was actually my dream job at one point in time, still kind of is. And unfortunately, around that same time, that didn't happen for me, but they actually brought on Tomi Lahren, who's kind of like this internet sensation of a blonde bombshell who is always going on angry rants. And people love her for that because they can tune in and channel their anger through her. But as I've said in the past, I take my issues with her because she's all about problems, not about solutions. Actually, this kind of ties right into the last NFL topic, because one of the things that she got called out for on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah was, he said, you keep on talking about Colin Kaepernick and how he shouldn't be protesting this way. Well, how is a black man supposed to protest? And she stumbled. She kind of dodged around the question with her answer. He came back and said, "You're still not telling me what way he should be protesting." And she was unable to answer that because she channels all of her energy into the actual problems without ever offering any solutions to those problems. And that's what always gets frustrating to me, because she's just tapping into the anger of the American people, which was my direct response and criticism of both Hillary Clinton and Trump, is their campaigns thrived on tapping into the vein of America that was angry at the other side. So anyway, Tomi Lahren, I don't agree with her. She's good looking. Everybody knows that. Doesn't matter. That's probably why most people on the left don't like her anyway. But while she was visiting a Minneapolis restaurant with her mother for brunch over the weekend, Fox News contributor, she's with Fox now, not The Blaze anymore, and we speculate on the fact that she's probably a hard person to actually work with behind the scenes, because those are the vibes I was getting from people at The Blaze that I actually talked to, was verbally and physically attacked, seemingly for her political views. In videos posted to social media, Lahren is seen being cursed out by restaurant customers who call her a B-word, racist, and C-word. In a proudly posted video, one woman throws a drink on the 25-year-old as she exits the establishment. One man being cheered on spewed the following at Lahren: "F that B, F this hoe," I guess is what he said. "Racist ass B, why you even out here? Get this B out of here, F that B." So he has a very extensive and intelligent string of vocabulary that he put together there, and apparently is the extent of that library as well. So this video itself does not have the audio of the people screaming, but let's actually take a look at her getting the drink thrown on her. So you can see she just threw it, goes back in slow motion. Obviously she gets it right on her shoulders and back and everything. And I guess right after that, her mother confronted the people and said, "What the heck are you doing?" And then they got into a verbal spats back and forth. But it seems like Lahren, for her part, was, according to, there's 2 sides to this story right now that are going around. I happen to believe this. restaurant goers were saying that she was minding her business, eating lunch with her mom, and everybody just started bashing her and going after her for things, and she tried to walk away. This woman threw water on her. On the other side, other restaurant patrons said that she was hearing commotion about her being in the restaurant. So obviously, again, both sides of the story start off with people being abusive in nature, either verbally or physically, against her in the restaurant. And their side of the story goes that as Lahren was walking out, she said, just can't escape this kind of spotlight attention or something like that. And that's when the woman threw the drink on her. Either way, unacceptable. It doesn't matter. I could run into, what's that guy's name? Rachel Maddow out of the restaurant, or what's her name? Keith Olbermann, and run out into them out in a restaurant and everything. I would never, despite despising them as people, do anything rude to them. If anything, if I happen to be, I'm not going to pursue the man versus woman thing. But if I ran into someone that I despise politically, that was a media figure in the bathroom, let's say, and I'm standing at a urinal and one of them walks in and stands right next to me and starts trying to talk to me or something, don't look over here, first of all. Okay, don't look over here. But they start talking to me, I might look at them and say, hey, listen, number one, I completely disagree with you on a lot of politics and stuff. I don't understand why you get away with actually saying this kind of stuff, but that's it. I completely disagree with you. Keep it respectful. I mean, we're talking about a divided nation right now that I believe has its roots in the Obama administration, that was split along racial lines, cop versus minority lines, the wealthy versus the poor lines, every male versus female, and how people identify, what their gender is, what their sexuality is, and everything. That administration split us so far, I don't know how we come back from it. But the fact of the matter is we are split probably the most right now on political affiliation and political opinions and everything. And what are we fighting about? That we have a different opinion on what the solutions are to move forward with policies in our country? Is that enough reason to actually spew hatred towards each other? Are you your political opinion? Is that all that you are, the makeup of your being, or the makeup of the person that you're talking to? It's become part of that sickness that we were talking about earlier in our society, that you view people based purely on what their opinion is, or ideology is, or religion is, and you're unable to get past that wall and actually see people for who they are. That's a real sickness in society, because at that point, you've lost yourself to society, and you might as well be a shut-in at your home and just pound away as an anonymous person on Twitter or something behind your computer screen. Because I got news for you. No matter how much you think you agree with everyone that you're surrounded by, your personal close friends, you're going to disagree with them on something. That's what makes our country so great, is that melting pot mentality of different cultures and backgrounds and opinions that come together to form a republic, not a democracy, where people represent the people here in the United States and have all these opinions come together to actually run a country the way it's being run, and what makes America America. So it's just ridiculous that we keep on dividing each other along those different lines. So that's Tomi Lahren news. What do we got here? Donna Smith joined. Okay. Hi, Donna Smith. All right. Next story here. Let's go back to some of the shooting incidents that have been happening across the country. Probably should have done this right after the Second Amendment speech I played earlier. According to the Blazer, there has been an uptick in active shooter incidents, and experts know exactly what to blame. The number of active shooter situations recorded by the government remained steady in recent years until 2017, when it spiked. Experts told BuzzFeed News they hope it was just an anomaly, but if it wasn't, the experts know exactly who to blame for the uptick in active shooter incidents. Sensationalized media coverage. I, on the podcast, along with Mike, my co-host, who isn't with us tonight, I probably should have mentioned that earlier because he's been very quiet. along with other media outlets and everything, have made it a personal choice not to identify the shooters by name and glorify them and give them that kind of attention, because this is what copycats want, is this popularity that they get from these incidents and carrying out these shootings. And if you keep on putting them into that 24-hour news cycle, other people are going to see that and say, well, you know what? I'm being bullied. No one likes me, and if I'm going to be infamous in some sort of way, if I have to have my 15 minutes of fame, I might as well go down in a blaze of glory and take the fire for it. And that's exactly what these kids are doing. It says between 2014 and 2016, the FBI recorded 20 active shooter incidents per year with 175 people murdered. I thought it was like over 10,000 a year. Oh, this is according to the FBI, not Fox News, by the way. But that number spiked to 30 documented incidents in 2017 with nearly 140 people murdered. That had a lot to do with that Vegas shooting, by the way, too. The reason for the spike? Experts told BuzzFeed that excessive coverage of incidents in the mainstream media are encouraging copycat killers to act. They also said inadequate and poorly enforced laws are behind the spike. These shooters get great satisfaction in doing this, and the media attention they get afterwards puts them in a place of history. Exactly what I was saying. I didn't even read this article yet. I'm just that good. We are also trying to use normal, rational thoughts to define an irrational act, which is why we focus on them so much, but we will never understand why people like the Las Vegas gunman do what they do. So there you have it. While we're on the topic of shootings, according to Fox News, sorry again, liberals there, Florida school shooting victims' parents moved to sue the gun maker, seller of firearm that was used in the Parkland massacre. So it says the families of 2 high school students who died in the tragic Parkland shooting earlier this year are pushing to sue the maker of the gun used in the massacre, accusing manufacturers of being in a protected class. Fred and Jennifer Gutenberg, parents of Jamie and Max Schachtner, father of Alex, filed a lawsuit in Broward Circuit Court Wednesday asking a judge to hold the gun manufacturer of the weapon the school shooter used to murder their children and 15 others partially responsible, according to Orlando Sun-Sentinel down there in Florida. The parents are seeking damages against Sunrise Tactical Supply, where shooting suspect, that person, who was 19, legally purchased his AR-15 weapon, and American Outdoor Brands, which was once known as Smith & Wesson, according to the paper. Both Jamie and Alex were 14 years old when they were gunned down in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School on Valentine's Day. Jamie had hopes of becoming an occupational therapist one day. Alex was a talented musician who played the trombone and baritone. Fred said, bottom line, we need to hold people accountable for this gun violence. So, here's the thing. Let me just see what the comments are. Gun maker responsible for your action, society. Yep. So, by the way, Gary is commenting on the video. I meant to put his video of him speaking in front of the city council on the video tonight. I will actually move that to next week because I want to not only play his response to the city council out there in Colorado, but also, very important, to see the character that showed up right before him who was for a gun ban in Colorado, because you always hear this excuse coming from the left or the anti-Second Amendment crowd. It's not that we're looking to take away all your guns. We just want to take away things like the military assault weapons and AR-15s and everything. We don't want to take away all your guns. Well, the person that spoke right before Gary literally said, yes, we want to take away all your guns. And that he's not the only one. When you go out and you get man on the street interviews of all these anti-Second Amendment rallies and everything, you are guaranteed to find a good crowd of people that will say, yeah, we're out here because we don't want guns in the United States anymore. We want to take them away from everyone. No one should be able to have guns, which is hard to track down those illegally obtained guns by criminals that actually use them for crimes. So go figure. You won't actually get those from the people, and you embolden the enemy or the criminal to actually pursue using that on victims who no longer have protection to actually protect themselves. Okay, so we were talking about this, though. Okay, so here they are. They want to actually sue the manufacturers of the guns because the guns were used in the crime. Which, like I said on Facebook, is kind of like going after Ford and Chevy and Volkswagen and everything else for every single user-operated error and drunk driving incident where a car was basically became the weapon in a car accident that ended up killing people. You might as well sue the hell out of the auto industry and take them out of business too, and get all those cars off the street, because car accidents kill a heck of a lot more people every year than gun deaths do. Okay? And as I mentioned in that speech, if you are just tuning in, when you look at the statistics of countries where they ban guns, the gun deaths go down. And that's the specific language that they use in those graphs that you see all over online, is that gun deaths go down because there's obviously less guns in the culture, but what they don't show is an uptick in actual homicide rates, because the enemy becomes emboldened, knows that the victims that they're going after probably don't have the protection legally obtained and used as responsible law-abiding citizens, and whether it's a gun that they used illegally or some other instrument, they go about continue killing people anyway. Just not in mass numbers, I guess you could say. But guess what? There's been a couple incidents over the last couple of years where a mass shooting was about to take place that those people were actually taken down by people with firearms. But that is kind of the narrative that the media doesn't want to cover, and you'll never actually come across unless you're actually looking on alternative websites like The Blaze or something else to get that kind of information. So these parents are obviously outraged. They're obviously hurt. They're going through a lot. I completely sympathize with them and understand that they're upset about this, but this is the wrong way of going about it, and you're abusing the court system to go after the object instead of the people that were actually the ones that carried out the attack. Oh boy. Okay, so I'm not going to play this video. I will throw it into the final podcast. It looks like Emma Gonzalez and David Hogg actually did show up on stage again together with something, but according to the Daily Wire, I believe it was last Thursday, last Thursday, I'm sorry. Parkland student activist Emma Gonzalez championed gun confiscation, another one who's out there saying, we want to take away your guns, not just some of them, at an Education Week forum, adding that anyone who wants to shoot semi-automatic weapons should go serve your effing country.
It's just cheaper to take away the guns that don't,
Exactly.
that aren't imperative.
It costs billions
to
of dollars
living
every
in
year.
America.
Yeah. Like the
You don't
amount.
need an AR-15 to protect yourself in bed from a robber at night. You don't need an AR-15 to have fun at a shooting range. Go join the army if you want to have fun shooting off a weapon and serve the fucking country, excuse my language.
So again, like David Hogg, has to curse to get her point across, because no one else will listen to her otherwise, because it's just not the kind of language that makes the headlines if you don't do it. She said, it's just cheaper to take away the guns that aren't imperative to living in America. You don't need an AR-15 to protect yourself in bed from a robber at night. You don't need an AR-15 to have fun at a shooting range. Go join the army if you want to have fun shooting off a weapon and serve your effing country. Excuse my language. No, I'm not going to excuse it, because you obviously said it on purpose, number one. Number two, asking or saying, she's not even asking in this case about if you need an AR-15. She's saying you don't need an AR-15. Well, Emma, screw you. You don't get to tell anyone what they can or cannot have to use as protection. That right, under the Constitution, under the Second Amendment, says shall not be infringed, especially by people who are self-proclaimed experts on the topic just because they happen to be in a building at the same time that a shooting took place. Okay? I've talked about this before. I had cancer. I'm not going to go into a hospital and tell doctors what they should be doing with cancer patients just because I went through a traumatic incident myself with my health, just because I went through that. It doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make you an expert. And these kids keep on putting themselves out there, projecting themselves as experts when they're clearly not. The statistics are always against them. The Constitution itself, our founding document, is always against them. And they are repeatedly caught on Twitter spreading false narratives and saying false statistics and news stories and what they call facts in regards to firearms that are disproven all the time. That's just these two clowns down there. not including Cameron Kasky, who literally said he's an expert on the situation on Bill Maher's show. All right. While we're talking about gun violence and everything, let's go to Hillary Clinton, who's just so full of wisdom all the time. We're unfortunate that we didn't get her as president because we would have had the opportunity, I want to say opportunity, to hear nuggets of wisdom like this one.
Joining a gang is like having a family. It's feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself. So we're either going to have gangs that murder and rob and do the things that are so destructive to the gang members and to the community, or we're going to have positive gangs. We're going to have positive alternatives for young people.
Woo! Okay, so there's two types of gangs, obviously. The negative gangs, like the Bloods and Crips and everything. Or we have the opportunity now, with the help of the Clinton Foundation probably, to start up positive gangs where, you know, the algebra gang, the the science gang and everything, where you can actually get together and make positive change and go out there and wear your handkerchiefs and everything that go along with flags that represent an algebra equation or something. This woman has so lost her gorge. She's so beyond repair at this point for the type of crap that dribbles out of her mouth. It's just unbelievable. So that's Hillary Clinton for you. She keeps on making the news with just asinine things that she's saying. Probably should have done this one before Hillary Clinton because this actually still deals with the last topic that we were talking about with firearms. But this is Elizabeth Warren, the other one, who's probably going to be the next woman to run for president, and what she had to say about a campaign promise. So bear with me. I know that you have to listen to Elizabeth Warren, but it is actually better than listening to the shrill, shrieking voice of Hillary Clinton. So listen to this.
Americans are armed to the teeth, and the cost is becoming clearer every day. The United States has nearly 90 firearms per 100 residents, nearly double the next closest country. So it is no surprise that despite having only 5% of the world's population, we have 31% of its mass shooters. And our gun homicide rate is more than 25 times higher than that of other high-income countries. Look, the solutions are out there. This is a problem that we know how to tackle. In Massachusetts, we have adopted a series of common-sense gun reform measures that have helped reduce gun violence from Beckett to Boston. We have a ban on military-style assault weapons. We adopted universal background check, and we originated Operation Ceasefire to curb rising youth homicides. These reforms are simple and effective, and most people in this country support them. Americans are in favor of stricter gun measures by more than 2 to 1, and 97% support universal background checks. The results are clear. These reforms work. The most recent CDC data show that Massachusetts had the lowest death rate among all 50 states. But we can do better. Gun violence in Boston rose by 25% in the first 9 months of 2017, and it has a disproportionate impact on Black and brown communities. This is more than just a mass shooting problem. Across the country, gun violence continues to be one of the biggest problems facing Americans, but nothing is happening in Washington, D.C. And let's be honest, that's because the NRA and its affiliates have spent more than $200 million since 1998. They have Republican politicians right in their pockets. But now, we're seeing something different. We're seeing people refuse to accept the inaction in Washington. We're seeing students lead the charge, speaking up, walking out, marching ahead. This is democracy in action. And it's time that politicians join the mothers, the students, the millions of others who have been leading this fight. Politicians should express the will of the people, not the will of the millionaire donors and special interests. So that's why I'm taking the No NRA pledge. I'm running for re-election to the U.S. Senate here in Massachusetts, and I pledge not to take a single penny from the National Rifle Association. The people of Massachusetts deserve to be represented by someone who will put their interests ahead of the NRA's demands. It's time we strip the NRA of its stranglehold over our children's lives and our community's safety. I hope others will join me in this pledge.
Okay, there you have it. Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, an anti-gun advocate, is not going to accept NRA donations. And in other news, as a pro-life person, I take a pledge right now to never take money and advertise Planned Parenthood on my podcast. You're preaching to the choir. It's unbelievable that she has to make a campaign promise to make it seem like she's this holier than thou politician who now has taken a pledge to never take NRA donations. She would never have taken them in the first place. And on top of that, even more importantly, the NRA would never give any money to someone like Elizabeth Warren, who is so anti-Second Amendment. And let's talk about the NRA for a second here, too. We've brought this up in the podcast before as well. The NRA is not an organization that's out there with trucks full of guns and firearms, handing out rifles to every single citizen on a block and going around the country doing this, or selling firearms or anything like that. This is a group that was specifically put together to protect the Second Amendment for the people by bringing together funds from people who are donating, not actually taking the taxpayer money like Planned Parenthood does for abortions in an industry that a lot of people don't agree with. It's actual donations from members of the NRA to help get the message out there to our politicians that we have a Second Amendment put in place in our Constitution that specifically stops the government from taking our firearms from us, shall not be infringed. That organization, the NRA, is there as a support and pillar to the Second Amendment of our Constitution, just as other groups are out there in support of other things for our country as well. The politicians, the Republican politicians that she's talking about in DC that are supposedly in the pocket of the NRA, it's not true. You're just talking about Republican politicians who support the Second Amendment, who would gladly take money from the NRA to support their campaigns for something that they already agree with, and they should agree with. Another thing I mentioned at the rally, it wasn't in my speech, but as I was introducing people, I said, one of the most important things that we need to realize is that the Constitution and founding documents like the Declaration of Independence and everything, our politicians on both sides of the aisle are sworn in to office with an oath to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States from both enemies, foreign and domestic. Within that Constitution is the Second Amendment, along with every other amendment on there as well. The Second Amendment specifically protects every single other amendment that we have. But on top of that, when you are sworn in as a politician to uphold and protect that from enemies, foreign and domestic, that right there, that Constitution, if everyone is swearing to uphold and protect that, should be our absolute middle ground and moderate politician. If that's just what they go on, is I just want to be a constitutionalist, stick to the Constitution, let all laws flow through that like a filter. You should be a moderate if you're a constitutionalist like myself. But instead, you have political bias that goes either way, and you have politicians like Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, John McCain, Turtle, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, Lindsey Graham, Chuck Schumer on the other side and everything. These are politicians that are on both sides of the aisle, progressives on both sides of the aisle, that work every day against the American people, against the Constitution. It's not just a one-sided issue on the sides of the aisles. We have Republicans and Democrats that are against the Constitution, and we have Democrats on the other side that we need to recognize as well that are supporters of the Constitution despite their other political differences. But if we are to protect the Constitution and have people swear in on it, we better damn well hold their feet to the fire that that's what they protect, because that is what separates our country from every other country out there. And these politicians like Elizabeth Warren are completely wrong. Okay, they keep on saying over and over again, because if you perpetuate a lie enough, you feel like it might take hold. This is not a democracy. This is a republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's a republic. It's right in the pledge, which they don't like to say anyway, but if they did, they'd actually recognize that. Now, Elizabeth Warren, in this case, didn't say that we're a democracy, but she said that with the students walking out and everything, that's how a democracy works. Yeah, that's how a democracy works, not here in the Republic. And these students that are walking out are putting themselves in danger of another active shooter situation that would be waiting outside for them anyway. And the school's allowing them to do so on school time when they're supposed to be protecting these children throughout the day and actually educating them are failing miserably. And that's why you should homeschool like we do. All right. Let's move on to this next... We talked about Hillary. We talked about Elizabeth Warren. Let's go to Nancy Pelosi, because if we're going to end the night on just the worst women of the Democratic Party, these are your top trifectas. So according to the Daily Wire, Loopy Pelosi babbles gibberish and blames farmers for self-inflicted damage. We're going to talk about this a little bit more. My wife didn't want me to make assumptions on Nancy Pelosi's health because there's assumptions on Trump's health by the left. So I promised that I would compare and contrast those a little bit more. Nancy Pelosi, the 78-year-old career politician who wants to be Speaker of the House again, just keeps on getting weirder. The House Minority Leader holds a weekly press conference, and every week she's more odd. Pelosi has long been known for her poor public speaking skills, but last week she was seen uttering gibberish, bizarrely laughing, and staring off mid-sentence before re-engaging the press during the appearance, according to the American Mirror. So let's take a look at that one that they're specifically talking about.
Farmers are struggling with plummeting prices, great economic uncertainty, and self-inflicted damage of the Trump tariffs. I say self for our country. But Republicans wrote a bill that abandons farmers, farming families. It weakens the farmers' safety net. It's 1.5 million veterans are involved in the nutrition program. But this is ideological about, I don't know, taking food out of the mouths of babies. That maybe is a priority for them. President Trump's months delayed speech on prescription drugs. When we won in 2006, one of our 606, we were fighting to expand the possibility. Tuesday was a great night for us. Well, I don't know. Are you confident in the White House? Next. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I don't know what the hell I'm talking about anymore. Where am I? We've talked about her in the past, especially with Lin-Manuel Miranda. And her babbling on that. There has to be a 7-hour footage on YouTube of just the best of Nancy Pelosi dribble that comes out of her mouth and everything. But here she is. She's trying to talk about and correlate the farmers of America and Trump's policy and how those two go together. And she's trying to blame. Here's what should have been happening in her speech, and I'm not supporting what she's saying, but she should have been blaming the Trump administration for what's happening to the farmers. But in her absent-mindedness and everything, she ends up blaming the farmers for what's going on with the Trump administration and stares off blankly into the crowd and loses focus completely and is just an absolute mess. And that's just this week. I'm sorry, that was last week. No, it was this week. Last week, she also said some other things as well. So let's go to this one. Actually, there's a couple articles I want to go over with this. This was actually just a couple days ago, actually. She was at a CNN town hall or something like that and was asked by a member of the audience a question. And let's take a look at her answer to that one.
Leader Pelosi, Quorum.us tells us that more than half of the senators running for re-election this year are over 65 years old. If they win, their term of service will be 6 years. their constituents are about 20 years younger. Isn't it time for some members to return to private service and to encourage younger folks to run for office so they have a voice in the laws
Should I take that personally?
You're not in the Senate, so you're good.
Let me say this, two things. First of all, what I said earlier about money in politics, if you reduce the role of money in politics and increase the level of civility in politics, you will elect more women, more young people, more people of color to elected office. And nothing is more wholesome than that. The fact is that Congress has a seniority system, so people in different regions want to make sure that the people who represent them are in a senior position to help express their views, the concerns of their region. But I'll take it personally and say that as a woman who came to Congress later because I raised my 5 children before I decided that to accept the opportunity to run for Congress, so lots of times women are a bit older because they have been raising their children. Now I'm happy because lots of young people, young women are running with young children, and we're trying to make it as family-friendly as possible. But I don't think, for me, I don't think age has that much to do with it. I think it's about, and especially as a woman, I want women to know that whether they're going from college to Congress, well, they can't really do that, but 25 years old to Congress, or in my case, from the kitchen to Congress after my kids were grown, that whatever you're bringing, it's new and fresh and different because you're a woman. And that is with all the respect in the world for our male colleagues, but the important thing is to have the mix at the table, So I think that, again, reduce the whole, as I said to you earlier, the whole environment is changing. These young people are registering kids, 17 years old, who are not even quite old enough to vote, but will be by the time of the election. The women marched, and now they're running. And so there's a whole, people say to me, how are you going to use all that talent? I said, no, how are they going to use us? How are we going to incorporate their fresh enthusiasm? I've never seen mobilization like it. And everybody has to justify their existence to their constituents, and that's the democratic way. But again, some members come to Congress older and they're newer. Some people have been there 20 years and they're younger, but they just got a younger start. So anyway, that is all to say we want to take the talent, the experience, the values where they are, and we want to have the mix in all of it. But if you have a problem with somebody who's older, run for office. Run for office. I say that to run for office.
Once again, Nancy Pelosi is just like Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton and everything, saying that it's a democracy. Again, she just stated it in there. Should she take offense to that question? Yes, and she should get the hell out of office because this is ridiculous. She's been in there since '87, and we need term limits. That's what it comes down to, is that we have too many career politicians. She was talking about how basically, does it come down to, am I going to be going anywhere? No, heck no, she's not going to be going anywhere because she's making way too much money off of the system, which happens to also be your tax dollars that are going into her pocket, where she manipulates the system and is able to use data that's only available to her and other congressional members to work the money markets and everything else to her favor and go into this as a public servant and come out as a multi-millionaire, okay? That's what happens with a lot of these politicians. They need to get the heck out of there. And on top of that, retirement or pensions for politicians need to go away as well. We shouldn't be paying for politicians after they serve. People like, I know that that type of stuff wasn't around at this time, but John Adams, Jefferson, Washington, when they served their time as public servants and politicians, they went back to their farms and farmed, and they didn't expect anything more from the country. As a matter of fact, when George Washington got done fighting the British, the people came to his door and knocked on his door asking him to be president, and he shut the door on them because he didn't want anything to do with it. And when he opened the door and talked to them. He said, "Haven't I done enough for this country?" And eventually they talked about they wanted to make him a king at first. They wanted to model after the system they had just left, but our founding fathers had enough foresight to put into place something like the Constitution and work up the Declaration for all that stuff and all those reasons and the structure. And instead of making him king, they talked to him about being a president, and obviously he became the first president and the structure behind that and everything. But these people, after they were done serving their time in office, went back to the private sector, lived out their lives without expecting anything else from the taxpayer dime. And these people suck the public dry. The taxpayers are left on the hook for everything that they do, whether you agree with their policies or not, and things like Obamacare and everything that massively destroyed our economy. They get to use their own Cadillac healthcare plans that aren't available to the public. It's always exceptions to the rules when it comes to these politicians, and it's infuriating. All right, so we talked about Nancy being loopy and answering different things. She didn't have much to say in regards. She didn't even answer that question about older members of Congress and everything. She just droned on and on and on about other opportunities, and apparently it's I forget the word that she used, but wholesome for minorities and women to get into office. That's a priority. Is the wholesomeness of women and minorities getting in office. Has nothing to do with if you're actually qualified and can make a difference or anything. As long as we look at the exterior of a person, it doesn't matter what the interior makeup of that person is, according to these types of people. These types of people? What do you mean these types of people? I mean old people like Nancy Pelosi that are losing it. By the way, I have heard on multiple occasions that there is a pharmacist that is involved with a pharmacy that caters to Congress. And there has been a leaking of information, I guess you could say, that they recognize and say, but without saying names, that there are multiple people in Congress that take Alzheimer's medication or dementia medicine and stuff like that. That's pretty scary. Now, I'm not saying Nancy Pelosi has Alzheimer's, but with the way she babbles and everything, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Now, in regards to people on the left accusing Trump of having mental issues and everything, there's no evidence to support that. The guy has a weird way of speaking about things. It's more on the frank side of things. But certainly not an inability to actually formulate sentences in a coherent manner and staring off into space and not knowing where the heck they are at, like Nancy Pelosi does. So we'll keep with Nancy Pelosi because she had something else to say in regards to Trump. Last week we talked about the video that was released in the absolute malpractice, I guess you could say, on behalf of the media, where they released a video of a response that Trump gave in regards to immigrants, and they painted it as him saying that all immigrants are animals and we're taking care of them at the border. And they left out the 10 seconds before that in regards to the actual question that was asked of him. What is going on with MS-13, the gang? A horrible gang that mutilates bodies beyond the point of recognition when they kill people so that the families can't even recognize them. They rape people, they kill them, they bash them to a bloody pulp and everything. This is a brutal gang. They ask about MS-13. He gives the response that these people are animals and we're trying everything that we can to take care of them at the border before they get into our country. The media completely misrepresents that, takes it out of context, and paints it as him saying it as all immigrants are that. Fall into that category, obviously. Well, Nancy Pelosi, after the news came out and it was corrected that he was actually talking about MS-13, got to the point where she actually started to defend MS-13, because there's no better way to go against Trump than to absolutely disagree with him on every single thing that he says, even if he's saying the right thing. So the headline for this one is Nancy Pelosi says Trump denies the spark of divinity with insult to MS-13 gang members. This according to the Blaze. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, scolded President Trump for denying the spark of divinity in each person over his comments that MS-13 gang members were not people but animals. She said, "It reminds me that I was talking about the religious groups and how they're concerned about feeding the hungry and the Gospel of Matthew and the rest. 41 million people in our country are food insecure. We believe, some of us that are attracted to the political arena, to government and public service, that we're all God's children. She's so full of it. There's a spark of divinity in each person, in every person on earth, and that we all have to recognize that as we respect the dignity and worth of every person. And as we recognize our responsibilities with that spark of divinity within us. And so when the President of the United States says about undocumented immigrants, these aren't people, these are animals, you have to wonder, does he not believe in the spark of divinity, the dignity and worth of every person? These aren't people, these are animals, she repeatedly, solemnly, the President of the United States. Every day that you think you've seen it all, along comes another manifestation of why their policies are so inhumane and why we have to continue the debate, striving for bipartisanship with openness about what is at stake and what the choices are, and to be unifying in every way possible. Calling people animals is not a good thing, she concluded. You know what's fascinating about Nancy Pelosi and all these other Democrat politicians is that they're against walls, yet they have gated communities. They're against firearms, yet they have armed security guards. They're against Republican policies on protecting our country from people illegally entering and making a home here and sucking off the government without going through the proper legal means of becoming a citizen and actually paying back into the system, when they're exporting more money than they're taking and spending here. They send more back home. Think about it this way. There's approximately 20 to 25 million illegal immigrants in our country right now, okay? A good portion of those people send money back to their own countries because it's worth more in their countries, and they're trying to take care of their families. Not going to disagree with them on that, on what their purpose is and everything. But imagine it this way. They're sending the majority of their money back to their home countries. So I think it's safe to say, if we were to just say, make a blanket statement that every single one of our illegal immigrants in our country sent $1 home every week to their country, you can guesstimate on at least $20 to $25 million leaving the American U.S. economy every week, going back to other home countries and being spent there instead. So this is a big economic problem. It's a big social, cultural problem and health issue and everything, because they overload the hospitals when they could be legally here paying back into the system that would actually support that kind of stuff. But Nancy Pelosi continues to just astound, and she wants to make an enemy out of Trump and see the divinity in gang members who mutilate children and women and men for just doing whatever. I actually heard a story from one of my clients this week who is a corrections officer, and I asked him if he has any experience with MS-13 gang members, and he said that the gang is so bad, it's split up into basically different groups so that it doesn't go by MS-13, but they all fall under the MS-13 umbrella. But basically what he said is, as one story example, okay, a woman was driving and happened to be the wife of one of these MS-13 gang members. She was cut off by another woman who just happened to cut her off in traffic. The woman who was the MS-13 affiliate, affiliated through the gang by being married to the man, called him, told him the woman's license plate number, and by the time that woman got home to her home address, there were 2 MS-13 gang members waiting there and unloaded 2 handguns into that woman because she merely disrespected this woman by cutting her off in traffic. That'll make you think about traffic situations a little bit deeper, and that's just how bad this stuff is. So obviously, you know, thinking a little bit deeper, they obviously had an MS-13 gang member in the Department of Motor Vehicles or the police department as well to feed that kind of information on license plates back to the gang members to be there by the time this woman just got home from that incident. But that's the type of animals that these people are, and I don't think that the president actually went far enough in his labeling on how despicable and evil these animals actually are. But it's not just Nancy Pelosi who wanted to fight back against Donald Trump in regards to MS-13. Singer John Legend blames for MS-13 as well. Says, according to the Daily Wire, in the land of liberalism, no one is responsible for their own bad actions, but in one way or another, bigoted America is usually to blame. This asinine logic holds true to the brutal immigrant gang known as MS-13 too, according to singer John Legend. In response to Donald Trump's categorizing those in the violent gang as animals, the left went full defend MS-13 to own the conservatives. On Thursday, Legend rattled off a quasi-defense of MS-13 on Twitter and rationalized that it is actually society and American policy that are partly to blame for creating and fostering the murderous gang. He said, "It's much more honest and challenging to realize they were all babies once and think about what in society, their home life, etc., took them from baby to violent gang member. And then to think about collective action we could take to mitigate these conditions. And we should particularly interrogate the role of American policy in helping to make MS-13 the organization it is now. Dehumanizing large groups of people is the demagogue's precursor to visiting violence and pain upon them. It makes it easier to destroy their families and much worse." Oh my word. So here he's saying that American policy essentially has led to MS-13 gangs being formulated. That it's American policy that's to blame for these gangs being in existence. And on top of that, we should be sorry for these gang members, because if we pursue them and arrest them or anything, it's their families that suffer. To hell with all the families that these MS-13 gang members are destroying by actually killing people beyond the point of recognition, where you can't even tell if your daughter was killed because they're beaten to a bloody pulp. He has John Legend and his stupid wife, who has gone on record and stated that Donald Trump should pay for her teeth to be fixed because she grinds them so much and because of his policies and the way he acts and everything. We have gotten to the point now where the left will actively defend a gang like MS-13 because they hate Trump so much. They hate him so much that they can't even support him in the things that he's right on. They have to take the opposite view just to come out looking like they're on the opposite side of the fence. How disgusting is that? That these people are actually defending a gang that mutilates people. It's ridiculous is what it is. So I just found that kind of interesting, and it is what it is. What's up, Chris Cole? All right, so if you missed the podcast tonight, we went over a lot of really good topics, and at the beginning was the speech from the Second Amendment rally last weekend. Again, apparently there's going to be another one in September. I'll be at, whether I'm participating in the event or just attending the event. Either way, I'll be there. Again, Relic Hunter Firearms is a store that I was at. Certainly go and check them out. I can always give them a shout out. And hopefully we have some video content coming to the podcast in regards to that firearms dealer as well. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. We covered a lot of really good topics. In the meantime, hang tight until next week when we come back to you with the Next Generation Y Conservative podcast. Have a great night, and God bless America.